Michael Asten worked in the resource industry for 18 years with BHP, and then he worked part-time as well at Monash University for 22 years. He did a lot of very interesting things, including analysing the natural cycles of climate change. Michael joins me from Melbourne. Michael, welcome.
Thank you, Rebecca. Lovely to be with you.
Lovely to have you here with me. So, Michael, the Net Zero Australia Partnership released its mobilisation report this week. The lead author is Professor Robin Batterham. He's a very distinguished scientist. He's the former chief scientist of Australia. He's a professor of engineering at Melbourne University. He has a track record in industry, and he was the head of global innovation at Rio Tinto. So he's got a real depth of expertise, both in a practical sense and in a theoretical sense. Now, I was a little alarmed to read that he's described net zero as an immense challenge. He says Australia will have to spend $1,300 billion on renewable energy, and that's just over the next decade. 1,300 billion, that's 1.3 trillion. Just in a decade. That's a staggering amount of money. I really was flummoxed to try and get my head around that. So I did a little calculation. It's back of the envelope, but tell me if I'm right. Australia's grid supplies about 40 gigawatts, I think. And if each gigawatt costs, say, about $2.5 billion, you could build the whole grid for about $100 billion, wouldn't you? And that would last 60 years. That's 100 compared to 1,300 years. That's 13 times more expensive. It's crazy. Have I got my sums right there, Michael?
I think you may be underestimating the cost of building a grid from scratch, but you're right in that the amount of money needed for the renewable energy version of our grid, which is this $1,300 billion cost, that cost is truly enormous, and it represents a very, very large challenge indeed, and it demands a great deal of conversation as to whether the purely renewable system is the way to go, or whether we have to consider other options like coal or nuclear, and in what mix.
Well, you're right, Michael. So, look, there's roughly, I think, 4 sources that Australia could look at. I don't say that they're under consideration at the moment for Professor Batterham, but I mean, roughly we're talking renewables, by which we mean wind and solar. We've got coal. We have got gas, and we maybe have time to talk a little bit like that. And then we've got nuclear. Now, as I said, they're not all under consideration. Poor old coal. I saw this morning in the newspaper that Labor's got even more dark about coal. I mean, goodness, we're shutting down those coal-fired power stations so quickly. Can we really do that, Michael? Can we just get rid of coal because Labor doesn't like coal?
No, look, we can't. And indeed, to be fair, the Net Zero Australia report, which Professor Batterham led, it relies on continuing use of coal up until approximately 2040. Now, some people don't like to hear that. They'd like to see coal just vanish. But the report which Robin Batterham has introduced makes it clear that we will need coal until 2040 on the scenarios which he is looking at.